Dear students, very good morning to all of you. In today's topic for the discussion in our Thulir I.A.S Academy, I have chosen feudalism as the subject matter of the discussion. What is feudalism? Feudalism is a socio-economic and political structure that revolves around land. According to Myers, feudalism denotes societal and governmental structure based on a specific land tenure, whereas the scholar Mark Bloch says that feudalism is a socio-economic and political structure which are defined by the presence of subservient peasantry, free labor service instead of wages, dominance of the specialized warrior class, the establishment of the custom of obedience and protection, vassalage, social fragmentation and disorder. So Mark Bloch says that these are the features which define the feudal order, feudalism. So now, feud, the term Latin word feud, denotes the land. The scheme that revolves around the land is called feudalism. Now, where and when the feudalism rose into prominence? Origin of feudalism. The feudalism as a socio-political economic structure rose to prominence in the late 8th century AD and in the 9th century AD of Europe. That is to say, after the Merovingian and Carolingian Empire and its debacle, the feudalism came to surface. Right? Now, in order to understand the feudal order of the society, economy and polity, we must remember three key words. 1. Fief. 2. Patronage. And 3. Sovereignty. Right? I repeat, fief, patronage and sovereignty. So these are the key elements that define feudal order. What is fief? Fief or feud is the Latin word which denotes the land. Right? Under the Roman Empire, the term beneficium literally denotes the offer of the estate by the king to the lords. Right? And the lords used to give this feud or fief to the vassals for the lifetime. Right? The practice of beneficium was there in the Roman Empire. It is believed that the medieval period had borrowed, medieval Europe had borrowed this practice from the Roman Empire. Right? Then, giving out the land to the lords and the vassals by the king have become hereditary when the political authority was weak enough. Right? Now, coming to the patronage, number 2, patronage. As you know, the German custom of comitatus, the German practice of comitatus literally denotes establishing a personal relationship between the lords and the vassals, right? The Roman concept of patrocinium, which literally means patronage. Gallic custom of commendation also literally means a personal state where the people subject themselves to the Lord, the mighty Lord, for their protection and, obedience. Right? Now you must remember, patronage is something that used to define the course of the feudalism. Coming to the third aspect, the third key element that defines feudal order, that is sovereignty. Under feudalism, the king used to allocate the land to the lords and then the lords to the vassals and then the vassals to other categories of the peasants. The fief was fragmented. That means the land was fragmented when it was granted to the lords, vassals, knights, peasants or the serfs. Now the point is that when the lords receive the land from the king, they get the right to administer justice, mint the coins, and also look after the people attached to the land. Right? Now, when the sovereigns were weak enough, those who received from the top to bottom the land from the king would become potentate to challenge the authority of the king, thus transforming themselves from duchies, counties and provinces into the feudal principalities. Right? They used to transform themselves from the position of duchies, counties and provincial governors into, semi-sovereign, in a manner in which they could challenge the authority of the ruler. Then coming to the, salient features or constituent features of the feudalism. Before getting into that, as you know, feudalism was the practice combined with, that is, feudalism was the practice that should be seen as the combination of the Roman, Christian and also the Germanic practices of land holdership. Now coming to the salient features, as I said a while ago, salient features are 11. Salient features of feudalism are 11. We can just put them in 11 in number. The first feature is beneficiary nature of the land. Right? The land is given by the king to the lords, then the lords to the vassals, right? And when the vassals received the land from the lords, they are supposed to render military service and also contribute to the king and the lords financially. So it is a military and financial service that was obligated on the one who received the land or fief from the king or the lord. Right? The one who received the land that is fief or feud from the king or the lord, is called liegeman, retainer, feud, feudal lord. We say liegeman, retainer, and grantee. Whereas the one who gave the land, that was the king and the lord, can be called as liege, lord, and some other word is also there. You can just look at the video there. Now coming to the second feature of feudalism, that is hierarchical grading system. Hierarchical grading system is the dominant feature of feudalism. Now, in the feudal social order, the king will be on the top, next the feudal lords, then next to them the vassals, then the knights, the warrior class, then you have serfs or the bonded peasants. So the bonded peasants were well stratified. So it is a hierarchically graded, hierarchically arranged system of society. Then coming to the third aspect, the third feature of the feudalism in Europe is of serfdom. Serfdom was the predominant feature of European feudalism, where the serfs were to receive the land from the lords, and they have to cultivate the land, produce the crops, and pay the rent for the land, render their free labor service, right? They cannot leave the land, they cannot leave the village where they live, and also the lords cannot, expel the serfs from the land. So they are subservient to the lords from whom they have received the land. So you must remember, serfdom is the predominant feature of the European feudalism. Then coming to the fourth salient feature, that is the multiple hierarchical rights over the land. Multiple hierarchical rights over the land. As I told you, each one, those who received the land or those who had given the land, had different degree of rights over the land. So from the king to lords, lords to vassals, vassals to the knights, and also to the serfs, each one have different rights, layered rights over the land that they have enjoyed at their disposal. Right? That is also very important feature of the feudal order, feudalism in Europe. Then fifth salient feature is rights of sovereign. So under feudalism, the king may exercise his complete authority or partial authority over the feudal lords and also the vassals and the knights as such. So it was a decentralized political order where the king was not able to exercise his ultimate power, right? So the rights of the sovereign were very much limited. Then coming to feudal economy. The feudal economy was the predominant feature of European feudalism, where the absence of the long distance trade, decay of urban centers, ruralization of economy, and self-sufficient village economy all constituted predominant modes of production or predominant features of the feudal economy. Predominant features of feudal economy. I just repeat, the decline of the long distance trade, urban decay or decay of the urban centers, absence of monetary economy, ruralization of economy, and self-sufficient village economy, and also one could say the forced labor, all constituted the salient features of feudal economy. Then coming to the seventh salient feature of the feudalism in Europe, homage and investiture. That means whenever whosoever wants to receive the land under their disposal must pay their homage by taking the oath of fealty and also act of investiture, right? So they must pledge to the Lord that they would do such military and financial services if they needed. Right? Then coming to next, that is eighth feature of the feudalism in Europe, that is institution of chivalry, chivalry, chivalry. What is it? Under feudalism, the warrior class specialized warrior class were obligated to protect the church and also the weak and oppressed. So it is considered to be honor and privileged status for the warrior class. So that is what is considered to be the institution of chivalry. Then the ninth feature of feudalism in Europe is noble castle. The castles of nobles, that is the palace of the nobles, were well constructed on the top of the mountains, well fortified, stone forts were there, and now, they are constructed in a manner in which no external threats nor internal threats could challenge the authority of the nobles, right? So the nobles' authority should not be disturbed, should not be dislodged, so that they have constructed huge forts on the mountains. Then coming to the 10th feature of the feudalism in Europe, that is, manorialism. So, less privileged lords used to be living in the manors, the houses which are called castles, attached to huge tract of land, like 500 to 2000 acres of land, which were attached to the manor, that is the castle of the less privileged feudal lord, and the people who were living in the vicinity of the feudal lord are supposed to go and work there unconditionally, right? Now you must remember, this labor service was free. If they fail to pay this labor service, if they fail to render this labor service, these number of days and number of hours which they fail to render the labor service to the feudal lords would get accumulated, and they will have to fulfill their dues. Even that would pass on to the next generations, future generations. Then coming to the last point, that is last feature of the European feudalism, that is defensive military structure. As you know, feudalism rose to prominence as a result of the collapse of the Roman Empire. There was fragmentation of polity, fragmentation of land, the social disorder and anarchy was coming up in the 8th and 9th century AD in Europe. In order to prevent the country and the region from collapsing into chaos and further anarchy, the specialized warrior classes were given the duty to protect the people from disorder. That means the defensive military structure was deliberately created by the efforts of the knights, lords, and also the less powerful monarchs in tandem with each other. Now, let us look at the merits or the advantages of feudalism. One, feudalism in Europe provided the protection and the security to the people from the recurring, barbaric and nomadic invasions that were happening from elsewhere in Europe, including Germany and Denmark, right? So, second point is that it provided, the second advantage of European feudalism is that it provided the checks on the unlimited powers of the sovereigns. Thus, the kind of greater autonomy was found there under feudalism. Third is that simplified administrative system was put in place, and delivery of justice was very quick under feudalism, because the feudal lords were very familiar with the people, and they could administer justice and deliver the immediate needs of the people. So then the fourth one, the fourth advantage of feudalism was that it promoted the spirit of liberty. Under feudalism, you have a decentralized political power, and you have the peasants and the feudal lords, vassals, knights. Everyone had a degree of liberty. They can exercise their freedom to speak, write, anything that they want, right? And then the fifth point you must remember, it promoted the republican ideals, right? Some scholars say that in England, the Magna Carta was brought about, and also feudal unions in Germany was formed because of the feudalism in Europe, because it permitted a degree of autonomy for those who wanted to go for the democratic functioning of the institutions. Then the sixth advantage of the European feudalism was that it promoted cultural developments and literary production. Yes, it were there. Then the last advantage of European feudalism was that the it promoted the noble qualities and the chivalry qualities among the feudal lords, that they have to protect their own people, right? And courtesy, patience, stability, everything they had, right? The noble qualities were promoted by the European feudalism. What were the disadvantages? The disadvantages or demerits of the European feudalism are: one, it undermined the national unity, because no people was permitted to imagine that they belong to a nation in a larger territorial entity. On the contrary, their scope of understanding, their scope of associating with the people is limited by the feudal lords and their castles. So that is the reason why it undermined the national unity. Nationalism and nationhood were not able to come up. Second was that it neglected agriculture, trade, and commerce. As usual, self-sufficient village economy was the predominant feature of the European feudalism. It did not produce surplus in the agriculture, thus does not promote trade, markets, and long-distance trade. Then coming to third disadvantage of European feudalism was Mutual rivalry and quarrels between the nobles have led to the anarchy and chaos in the society. That you must remember. The fourth point was that hardship and the miserable condition of the peasants was yet another disadvantage of the European feudalism, because the majority of the peasants who were otherwise called serfs had to serve the feudal lords without any remuneration. Then coming to the last one, you must remember the privileged classes and the decline of the moral values would be considered to be the fifth disadvantage of the European feudalism. You must remember, feudal lords, at the expense of the pains, at the expense of the pain of the serfs and the peasants, they have enjoyed the luxurious life, right? They have lost their moral quality, that they should protect the people whom they are supposed to guard, right? So then coming to the causes for the decline of the European feudalism. Why the European feudalism declined? No, I would tell you four reasons why it declined. One, hostility from the kings and also from the people, that led to the decline of the European feudalism. You know that the kings whose power were limited by the presence of the feudal lords. Similarly, the peasants in the form of the serfs were exploited much. So both the king and the peasants were looking for an opportunity to break the system. The second factor for the decline of feudalism is the impact of the crusades. So in the 12th and 13th century, you would find Europe witnessed the crusade, religious war between Islam and Christianity. And in that process, the kind of disruption that had impacted the society gave a blow to the presence of the feudalism, the concept of feudalism. Then coming to improvement in technology of warfare, you must remember the coming technology is always dynamic. It always improves. When the technology improves, the production would increase. That is, means of production would get improved. The means of production, when it get improved, then it will lead to the surplus production. When the surplus production comes up, then feudalism will shatter, right? You must remember these things. And then coming to the debate why feudalism declined. There were scholars who have taken the debate of the transition from feudalism to capitalism, or the crisis of feudalism, right? So I have outlined four scholars and their debate, their arguments. One, Maurice Dobb, whose argument is centering around internal contradiction theory. Second, Paul Swayze. Paul Swayze's argument centers around the expansion of trade theory. Then you have Michael M. Poston, whose argument centers around the demographic theory. Then Robert Brenner, whose theory of decline of the feudalism or rise of capitalism centers around the political theory. So let me explain them one by one. Now, let me take Maurice Dobb. In his studies in the development of capitalism, this is his work in which he explains how the feudalism faced its crisis, right? He says, no external threat had caused the decline of feudalism. That means feudalism did not decline as a result of any external threat. On the contrary, it declined as a result of internal contradictions. What was the internal contradiction that he talks about? One, in the in the feudal order, there was a possibility for growth of surplus production in agriculture. The growth of surplus production in agriculture led to the growth of towns, cities and markets, and also use of the cash payments, that the peasants and the feudal lords preferred cash payments in the place of the kind. Now, what he says that these the growth of the towns, urban centers have led to the decline of feudalism, where the peasants were migrating from the countryside to the urban center, right? So feudalism declined as a result of the internal contradictions and not external threat. It was the argument presented by Maurice Dobb. But coming to Paul Sweezy. Paul Sweezy talks about expansion of trade theory, right? He takes up the argument to explain the decline of feudalism from the perspective of trade and commerce. He says in the 12th and 13th century that when the Crusades were going on, there was a greater connectivity made between the Europe and the East. Not only that, the connection between the Europe and the East had opened up the possibility for the trade and commerce with the Mediterranean and also the Northern Sea. Now, this trade and commerce resulting from this connectivity had also led to the opening up of the intra-European communications that led to the development of the cities and urban centers, where the large number of the peasants and the serfs were fleeing from the land, villages, and then they took shelter in the urban centers. So thus they have brought about the collapse of the feudal order. This is what Paul Sweezy talks about, that is expansion of trade theory. Then coming to the third one is Michael M. Poston. Michael M. Poston talks about demographic theory for the decline of feudalism. He says in the 12th and 13th century AD, the population increased, but when the population increased, the food production must also increase. But that was not the case with Europe, where population increased but the food production kept constant. Therefore, there was a crisis, that is, food prices increased, the feudal lords increased their revenue, fertility of the soil started declining, the fertility of the soil started declining, epidemics and other diseases have started spreading. Therefore, the population of Europe started declining, right? From the increase of the population to the decrease of the population is what has led to the decline of feudalism, as Michael M. Poston talks about demographic theory. Okay, then coming to Robert Brenner. Who was he? He was an economist who talks about political theory for the decline of the European feudalism. He says there were political divergence happening in Western and Eastern Europe. In the Western Europe, you have the monarchs along with the ruling class gave some degree of rights to the peasants or the serfs to have struggle for their supremacy, because the peasants were allowed to cultivate the fallow land, and for that they have given some support. The ruling class had given some support. Why? In order to increase the land revenue. The increase of the land revenue accelerated the surplus production by the peasants, because they also want to pay the rent to the ruling class. So they cultivated the fallow land, thus increased the surplus production. Fine. Now, such political community was not there in East. In the East, the monarch's power was very much limited. Now the feudal lords were very dominant in the East. Feudal lords were dominant, whereas the commercial communities, the trading communities, were limiting the powers of the feudal lords, and they had accumulated the wealth through trade, yet they stopped accruing the benefits of the trade to the feudal lords. And that's why you would say the society in Eastern Europe was quite static in comparison to the West, where there was already a possibility for the peasants to rise up in the social layer, whereas in the East that was not there. That's why in the Western Europe, such a political atmosphere structured or induced by the presence of semi-democratic nature of polity had actually activated the decline, actually led to the decline of the feudalism in Western Europe and not in Eastern Europe. Okay, dear friends, dear students, all my well-wishers, please listen to this lecture. In order to make it shorter, I have been little quick enough to speak out, but I will give you the description in the description box, and also in the video you can have a look at it. I have prepared a notes on it. I have prepared a script on it. You can go through it and listen to it, and if you like it, share it with your friends and well-wishers. And if you have not subscribed it so far, you can also subscribe the channel. Thank you.